Let's talk about a withdrawal. The National Intelligence Estimate came out in January and said this: if coalition forces were withdrawn rapidly, we judge that this almost certainly would lead to a significant increase in the scale and scope of sectarian conflict in Iraq, intensify Sunni resistance to the Iraqi government, and have adverse consequences for national reconciliation. If such a rapid withdrawal were to take place, we judge that the Iraqi security forces would be unlikely to survive as a non-sectarian national institution. Neighboring countries might intervene openly in the conflict. Massive civilian casualties and forced population displacement would be probable. Al-Qaeda in Iraq would attempt to use parts of the country, particularly in Al-Anbar province, to plan increased attacks in and outside of Iraq. Are you prepared for that?
Well, let me tell you something, Tim. They said this about Al-Qaeda in Iraq. They said we have weapons of mass destruction. The same intelligence agency, we're spending more money than all the other intelligence agencies in the world, came to the conclusion that it was in our national interest to go into Iraq. Now they're saying this. The public in Iraq says the opposite. They say we're the ones that are inciting demonstration. We're the ones that they want us out of there. 64% of the public in Iraq wants us out of Iraq. The world wants us out of Iraq because we're focusing on caught in a civil war. So there's going to be instability. But they have to settle themselves. What I'm saying is we can't do it ourselves. The Iraqis have to do it. The international community has to get involved. Sure, there's going to be some problems, but it's not going to be any worse than it is now.
Michael O'Hanlon of the Brookings Institution said this in the Wall Street Journal: Congress's overall efforts are misguided for one fundamental reason. We cannot yet be sure that the situation in Iraq is totally hopeless. It is bad, indeed bad, very bad, but there still may be a glimmer of hope. If not to win, then at least to achieve some minimum level of stability. Do you believe it's totally hopeless?
Tim, I believe that we can't win this militarily. I believe it has to be done diplomatically. That's why I think redeployment is the first move. I suggested to the administration they ought to get our troops out of the palaces, Saddam Hussein's palaces. We ought to bulldoze Abu Ghraib. We ought to close Guantanamo. Those are the kind of things that get worldwide attention because of what happened in those tragic incidents. So it's a matter of you can't win it militarily. It has to be done internationally. It has to be diplomatically. And in the meantime, we've lost our ability to respond to a threat to our national security down the road. And that's just as important as what's going to happen in Iraq.
But to the point, why not take the chance, the glimmer of hope? Or do you just think it's totally hopeless?
I don't see any chance of us winning this militarily. I think they're going about it the wrong way. They're finally starting to change. They're talking to Iran. That's what's going to prevail there. That's where you're going to have stability. You're going to have international communication. This is just as important to the Europeans as it is to us. But why did the British pull their troops out? Because they came to the conclusion in these kind of wars you can't win it militarily. You have to win it diplomatically, and you have to use the international community.
Vice President Cheney weighed in on your thinking. He said, quote, I think, in fact, if we were to do what Speaker Pelosi and Congressman Murtha are suggesting, all we'll do is validate the al-Qaeda strategy. The al-Qaeda strategy is to break the will of the American people. In fact, knowing they can't win in a stand-up fight, try to persuade us to throw in the towel and come home, and then they can win because we quit. How does it feel to be linked with al-Qaeda by the Vice President?
Well, it's unfortunate that the Vice President does not have the art. He doesn't listen to what I'm saying. We can't send troops into combat without equipment. We can't send troops into combat without training. We can't extend them past the one-year boots-on-the-ground policy that they have, and we can't continue to have them over there in Iraq more than a year. That's what he's not saying. He's not saying our strategic reserve and the future threats to this country significantly increased in the last year on strategic reserve. That's what he's not saying. So he attacks my differences, but he doesn't attack the policy. He doesn't talk about the policy and the results of what I'm saying.
But you're a Marine. You like being linked with al-Qaeda?
Well, they'll take care of al-Qaeda. Let me tell you this, Tim. Al-Qaeda will be taken care of by the Iraqis. They know who. There are only 2,000 al-Qaeda. They're Iraqis fighting Iraqis. It's a civil war between the Shias and the Sunni, and they won't negotiate. The Shias won't negotiate with the Sunni. What I found out when I was out there last time, just a month ago, the Sunnis are not going to help in this whole process as long as the Shias control it and won't negotiate with the Sunnis. Now, this may seem like an incidental point, but this is probably the most important point. They won't change their constitution to give the Sunnis some influence in this whole thing. They've got to work it out themselves. We cannot do it for them.
Do you think think the vice president's questioning your patriotism?
No, I don't think so. No, I met with the vice president the other day. We talked about the money. We talked about some of the things that I felt were important. And I said to him, we can't send these troops in without equipment, without training. It can't be done. If you do that, it's a disservice to our troops, to the families, this small percentage of families that are fighting this war.
Did he apologize to you?
Oh, no. This is one of those things where he said that overseas. He didn't blame me for at least getting the British out. I thought he might blame me for getting the British out, but he didn't do that.